Hello there, you're watching the nightly news program live on All 24 News Channel from Algiers. Next are today's top stories. Western Sahara celebrates the National Day of Army and Martyrs' Day in the Sahrawi refugee camps. Algeria and Venezuela share joint affirmation on the intensification of work to expand bilateral cooperation in many economic fields. Also ahead in our news, many Sudanese civilians are relieved after ceasefire agreement, and the head of the Sovereignty Council confirms that the failure of previous truces is due to the lack of mechanisms to follow up on violations. Also next in our news, Canada reveals $500 million in military aid to Ukraine and announces its participation in training its pilots. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off in our news, Western Sahara celebrates the National Day of Army and the Martyr in the Sahrawi refugee camps, where President and Secretary General of the Polisario Front, Ibrahim Ghali, affirmed that June 9th is a special day in the history of Sahrawi people and their struggle for freedom and independence. Sahra Farjani reports.
Sahrawi people commemorated on Friday National Day of Army and Martyr, affirming their will to obtain freedom and independence and recover all their lands from the Moroccan occupation. Sahrawi President, Secretary General of the Polisario Front, while presiding over the commemoration event, underlined that the decision of the Sahrawi people to resume the armed struggle requires more caution, awareness, and support for the Liberation Army.
50 years of heroic fight is an affirmation that our people's struggle reached the point of no return towards inevitable victory, and its ultimate goal, extending the control of the Sahrawi state over all of its national territory. The Sahrawi Republic is an irreversible national, regional, continental, and international reality, and a decisive factor that cannot be overlooked to ensure balance and stability in the entire region.
As part of the Sahrawi Revolution and the implementation of the outcomes of the 16th Conference of the Polisario Front, Sahrawi Army escalates their combat operations as part of liberation war against the Moroccan occupying forces in all their locations.
The 16th Conference of the Front and its slogan of escalating the fighting to expel the occupation and obtain sovereignty constituted a decisive turning point in the level of national liberation war. So it was necessary and obligatory to adapt the general and strategic orientation to the requirements of comprehensive war that affects the occupying army at the level of all its places and point of presence.
The Sahrawi people, in defense of their rights to self-determination, believe that continuing the armed struggle is a necessity in order to expel the occupation forces and regain the sovereignty over their legitimate lands.
On the same occasion, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic and the Secretary General of the Polisario Front, Ibrahim Ghali, congratulated Algeria on winning deserved membership in the Security Council. In a speech he delivered during his supervision of the commemoration of the Martyrs' Day and the National Day of the Army in the state of Bujdur. Let's listen.
I congratulate Algeria on the deserved victory for its membership as a non-permanent member of the Security Council. And if the Sahrawi people in the refugee camps, in the liberated areas and various places have encouraged and inspired Algeria, then the militants in the occupied lands took to the street to express their solidarity, support and joy for Algeria to obtain this well-deserved position.
Still in relation with Western Sahara news, Russia expressed its regret at the unstable situation in the Middle East and Africa, especially in Western Sahara, which is still under Moroccan occupation. During an intervention in the UN Security Council, permanent representative of Russia to the United Nations, Vasily Nebensia, said that it is regrettable that the situation in most countries of the MENA region is still complicated due to the instability, especially to what is happening in Western Sahara. Back to national news now. Security services in the Algerian province of Bashar in the southwest of the country captured a criminal network and seized more than 2 quintals of drugs smuggled from Morocco. 4 other people were arrested as they were helping to secure the track of the seized drug shipment. According to a statement by the Algerian General Directorate of National Security, the operation came as a result of exploiting information about the presence of a shipment of drugs that was to enter from the Moroccan border on board a vehicle. The 4th session of the Algerian-Venezuelan Joint Governmental Committee for Economic Cooperation held in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, witnessed a joint affirmation on the intensification of work to expand bilateral cooperation and other economic fields, as well as working together to raise the volume of trade exchanges in the near future in order to serve the interests of the 2 countries.
We look forward to establishing strategic relations at the highest levels with the development of bilateral exchanges in all economic and trade fields, especially in the agricultural sector, in light of the issue of food security that worries all countries today.
To some other regional news now. The global credit agency Fitch Ratings lowered Tunisia's rating, a decision made due to the delay of Tunisia's getting the financial loan from the International Monetary Fund. Meanwhile, Italy showed its support to Tunisia in obtaining foreign financing to help it recover its expenses. More with Salman Sib.
The American global rating agency Fitch has downgraded Tunisia's credit rating amid the severe economic crisis in the northern African nation, due to the delay in its ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to obtain a new loan at a value of $1.9 billion. The rating agency, in a statement, said that the new rating for Tunisia reflects the state of uncertainty surrounding the country's ability to raise funds in order to cover its expenses.
The downgrade of credit rating reflects the uncertainty of Tunisia's ability to raise sufficient funds in order to meet its significant fiscal needs. Our main scenario assumes an agreement between Tunisia and the International Monetary Fund by the end of this year, but this is much further than we previously expected, as the risks are still high.
In fact, the agency's expectations about Tunisian financial needs were to rise to about 16% during the current year 2023, especially with the adoption of the country's budget on foreign loans.
In the absence of an engagement with the International Monetary Fund, Tunisia could obtain external financing in the amount of $2.5 billion in 2023, while the government financing program for Tunisia relies on more than $5 billion in external financing.
Amid Tunisia's hard negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to obtain a loan to cover its expenses, Tunisia is also intensifying its movement with European Union countries, for instance, Italy, that showed its support to Tunisia in obtaining foreign financing. For this reason, the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is going for her second official visit in less than 10 days to Tunisia, accompanied by the Dutch Prime Minister and the President of the European Commission.
Ambiguity still surrounds the fate of the 6+6 committee joint agreement between the House of Representatives and the Supreme Council of State in Libya, despite the full consensus that has been reached on electoral laws. And according to the agreement, which was not signed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Akila Saleh, and the President of the High Council of State, Khaled al-Mashri, it is allowed for the military and dual nationals to participate in the presidential elections only if the military resigned from its position and could return to it in case of losing the elections in the first round. In Somalia, at least 6 civilians died and other 10 were wounded in 6-hour siege fighters from the armed group Al-Shabaab at a beachside hotel, in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Meanwhile, Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack, noting that it targeted a place frequented by the authorities, confirming its responsibility for another explosion on Friday, which killed about 27 people, most of them children, in addition to 53 people who got injured.
I was sitting near to the beach when the first explosion occurred at the front gate of the hotel, and there was another explosion at the back. I ran to a nearby wall and hid behind it, and the Somali forces saved me from there. I saw 4 bodies, 2 women, and the other 2 men, and I was shocked when I saw them. It was a very shocking scene, but God saved me.
At the wake of the US-Saudi brokered ceasefire, which Sudanese warring factions agreed upon, civilians in major cities of the country have lived relief amidst hopes for extending the agreement. The war in Sudan caused a severe humanitarian crisis in the country as thousands of people fled the country seeking refuge in neighboring countries such as Chad, Egypt, and Ethiopia. More details with the Samayed.
Sudanese cities have lived some sort of relief after the start of a US-Saudi brokered ceasefire that was agreed upon on Friday by the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces. People in Sudan lived the first hours of peace in hopes that the truce would last for the next days after they'd lived severe conditions due to the fierce fighting. The conflict has provoked many humanitarian crises since its beginning in mid-April. Violent clashes and use of heavy weaponry have been a major sign of how violent the confrontations were. Many people have fled the country, while others live in uncertainty and despair.
Regarding the humanitarian situation which our people live due to the current military operations, the armed forces have agreed on the 24-hour ceasefire proposal. We announce our commitment to it, as we indicate that we preserve our right of dealing with any violations.
At the wake of the 24-hour truce, the warring parties in Sudan insisted on respecting the truce for humanitarian purposes. However, civilians live in fear of breaking the agreement, as they had already experienced similar situations, especially that all the infrastructures of the country have been deteriorated.
We confirm our unwavering position to respect the principles of human rights and international law. We express our solidarity with our people. We announce our agreement with the mediation of Saudi Arabia and the USA for a 24-hour humanitarian truce, and we confirm our commitment to it during this day.
For his part, the chief of the Sudanese army, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, confirmed his total support for any solution that would end the war in the country. Al-Burhan also revealed that breaking the previous truce agreements was due to a lack of effective strategies to supervise the violations of the ceasefire.
5 people were killed on the outskirts of the Turkish capital Ankara after an explosion at a rocket and explosive plant. Ambulances rushed to the scene after the powerful blast, which shattered windows of nearby houses and shops. According to officials, the explosion was likely to have been caused by chemical reaction during the production of dynamite. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson stated on Sunday that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is a good friend of the Chinese people. Wang Webin, on the same statement, confirmed that Mahmoud Abbas is the first president on the schedule to visit China this year, and this is a sign of good relations between China and Palestine.
President Abbas is an old friend and good friend of the Chinese people. He is the first Arab head of state received by China this year, fully embodying the high level of China-Palestine good relations, which have traditionally been friendly. China was one of the first countries to recognize the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the State of Palestine.
China's State Flood Control and Drought Relief Headquarters announced on Sunday that it has launched a Level 4 emergency response to flooding as heavy rains have pounded southern parts of the country. Work teams dispatched by the headquarters have rushed to South China's Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region and East China's Fujian Province to guide the rescue and relief work. The headquarters has instructed local authorities to monitor weather changes closely, ramp up patrols of high-risk areas, evacuate those at risk, and protect those involved in rescue work.
We launched a rescue operation as soon as we arrived at the scene. So far, over 300 trapped villagers have been evacuated.
Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, announced the course of negotiations on the Iranian nuclear file and the lifting of Western sanctions on Iran. The Iranian presidency stated in that Raisi stressed during a 90-minute phone call he received from his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron the need to avoid politicization, politicization and non-constructive measures regarding the nuclear file negotiations, underlining his country's commitment to cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. For its part, the French presidency stated that Macron had expressed to his Iranian counterpart his concern about the course of the nuclear program, calling on him to take achievable measures. Regarding the war in Ukraine, the French presidency said that Macron called on Iran to stop its support for Moscow. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday that Ukraine is still preparing for its counter-offensive without giving any details, while Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced from Kiev a new military aid package for Ukraine. More on the latest with Sofian Kenturi in this report.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky assured on Saturday that the Ukrainian counter-offensive is underway and that Ukrainian forces will make sure to push forward to retake its cities. His announcement comes few days after Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said there was no announcement, but there would be a counter-offensive.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin talked about our counter-offensive, and that is so interesting. It's so important to keep Russia overwhelmed by the idea of our counter-offensive.
For his part, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said during a visit to the Ukrainian capital on Saturday that Canada will participate in the multinational effort to train Ukrainian fighter pilots. He also announced 500 million Canadian dollars as a new military aid package to Kiev.
Today, I can announce that we will provide $500 million in new funding for military assistance. In addition, today I'm announcing that Canada will be part of the multinational efforts to train fighter pilots and to maintain and support Ukraine's fighter jet program, leveraging Canadian expertise in these areas.
On the battleground, Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Konashenkov said that Russian forces repelled several Ukrainian attacks in different regions, including Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Bakhmut during the last few hours.
During the past 24 hours, Ukrainian forces have continued their attacks in different regions, including Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Bakhmut. Our troops repelled 2 attacks using tanks in the region of Zaporizhia.
As for the international peace efforts, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that he plans to speak to the Russian President Vladimir Putin by phone in the near future in order to urge him to withdraw Russian forces from Ukraine and to make an end to the conflict.
Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei stated on Saturday that his country is not satisfied with the manner in which grains are being exported through the Black Sea. One day after his meeting with the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Sergei Vershinin stated that there are obstacles that block his country's exports. In the same context, the United Nations spokesperson stated that the international organization enhanced Russian food and fertilizer exports as it had lowered shipping prices and facilitated the flow of ships to its ports.
The past months have also shown tangible progress regarding the implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding, including increased export volumes of Russian food and fertilizer, a steady flow of ships to Russian ports, and lower freight and insurance rates. Challenges, however, remain, but we will spare no effort to overcome all remaining obstacles.
A man has been put under investigation for attempted murder in connection with the stabbing of 4 children in a park in the French Alpine town of Annecy. The suspect, identified by the police as a 31-year-old Syrian that was examined by a psychiatrist who considered his state of health to be compatible with holding him in custody. And according to the French authorities, he had recently been refused asylum in France because Sweden has already granted him permanent residency and refugee status a decade ago. To Colombia now, the 4 children from an indigenous community in the country were found alive in the south on Friday after more than 5 weeks of search as the plane they were traveling in crashed in thick jungle. The children were rescued by the military with the help from local indigenous communities near the border between Colombia's Colombia's Caqueta and Guaviare provinces, close to crush inside, that is. The siblings have suffered insect bites and other minor injuries, but they are in acceptable state of health, the government said on Saturday.
In general, the children, the boy and the girls, are in an acceptable state. According to the medical reports, they are out of danger. What is needed is to stabilize them.
Investment projects and the debt ceiling bill signed over the weekend were among the topics touched on during a U.S. cabinet meeting on Tuesday. Heading the meeting, President Joe Biden highlighted the launch of a new online interactive map to locate private and public investment projects across the country. The debt ceiling deal keeps fiscal 2024 spending flat at this year's levels, following or allowing a 1% increase for fiscal 2025. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates that the deal will cut deficits by about $1.5 trillion over a decade from its current low baseline forecast.
All right. And today I'm here with my cabinet continuing to focus on getting the job done for the American people and continuing to invest in America. Invest in America is more than just a slogan. We're investing in the American people, in our infrastructure, our manufacturing, we're investing in jobs in almost every community across the country.
In the U.S. still, Donald Trump was defiant in his first public appearance since being indicted on 37 criminal counts tied to his handling of classified documents. Former President Donald Trump on Saturday cast his federal indictment as election interference. More details with Islam said.
One of them. It's a hoax.
The former U.S. president is set to go back to the presidential campaign as his federal impeachment struggles the GOP's 2024 presidential race. The federal indictment, which was unsealed on Friday, counts 37 charges against Trump, including the one related to keeping highly classified document at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. Close advisor to Trump, Walt Nauta, was also charged as a co-conspirator with 6 felony counts.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged.
After his indictment, the ex-president has landed in Georgia, where he is scheduled to headline the state's Republican Party convention. After addressing Georgia's GOP convention, Trump will travel to North Carolina later in the day. During his Georgia rally, Trump has denied any wrongdoing and vowed to fight back in 2024, accusing Joe Biden of corruption and weaponizing the Justice Department.
On November 25, 2024, we're going to stand up to the corrupt political establishment. We're going to evict a totally corrupt president, Joe Biden, from the White House, and we're going to finish the job that we started.
The convention will be Trump's first event in the state since launching his 2024 presidential campaign, and his first public appearance after being indicted over the classified documents case. Trump is due to make a first appearance in the case in a Miami court on Tuesday, despite all the political woes that haunts the former president. Public opinion polls show Trump as the front-runner among his Republican rivals in the presidential race. However, the indictment and charges against him will likely make him as the first president to run for this position behind bars.
And God bless America. Thank you very much.
And finally, to some football news. Manchester City defeated Inter Milan 1-0 in the UEFA Champions League final on Sunday. At the Atatürk Olympic Stadium in Istanbul, Manchester City's victory complete a historic treble and also win the first UCL crown. The match remained goalless until the second half as Rodri scored the only goal in the fixture and put Manchester City on the lead. Well, that's the end of our program. For more, our social media platforms and our website are under your service. Thank you for watching. Till next time, take care.